Hi, my name's Liam. I'm a VFX student, and as I'm approaching the end of my course, I can't help but realize the importance of networking and what it takes to become established in business as a creative. Today, I have an interview with Sally Brownbill. Sally is an expert consultant in connecting creatives with their industries, with more than 20 years' experience helping graduates' careers blossom, and now also with her book, How to Develop Your Career as a Photographer. I wanted to talk with Sally as she has invaluable knowledge on building portfolios, websites, networking, and freelancing, all skills that any creative can use to find employment, whether it's freelance or full-time. Thank you for your time, Sally. And could you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Thanks, Liam, for having me. Yeah, absolutely. I have a business called the Brownbill Effect, and the Brownbill Effect has been created, as you said, over the last 20 years, and it sort of forms many parts. There's one area where I help consult creatives at all stages of their career. I help to build their confidence, look at their portfolios, how their CVs are set up, look at their websites, advise them on their career strategy and path. And it's not always just graduates I'm working with, a lot of the time it is, but it's also people that have been in the industry for 5, 10, 15 years that sometimes lose their way as well, or new things have come into the world and maybe they want to go from being a designer into special effects, or they want to go from being a photographer to a filmmaker, and how to make that journey possible. I also have a creative directory where people can list their companies on there for a small annual fee, and then I help to promote and network them. And then I also have an assistant register. So students, current students and recent graduates, predominantly in photography and filmmaking, can have a profile on that website. And we can get them work assisting with filmmakers, photographers, producers who need extra help. And then, as if that's not enough, I also help people find full-time and freelance work in-house. And that's right across communications, marketing, design, and photography. And it's all of the work that I do with all of the individuals all feeds into each other. So whilst there's lots of different moving parts within the Brownbill Effect, all of them are based on my network, and all of them are about making people and empowering them to be the best that they can be, and to help them get work in a confident way, really. So that's sort of what I do.
That's amazing, Sally. It really sounds like you work with so many different people and creatives that I'm just surprised how they all can benefit from learning more about networking and building and managing your portfolio or business. And I know you started with a creative directory and as a photographer at RMIT. Can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to first pursue photography and how it led to owning the Brownbill Effect and creating it?
Yeah, sure. Well, all my life I wanted to be a photographer, so I didn't even realise it was a profession when I was going through school. And when I did realise, I went to RMIT. I was very fortunate to get in those days. They accepted about 30 students out of hundreds that applied. So we were the chosen few, which was wonderful. I learned a lot about photography. I then began assisting shortly after I graduated, where I learned a little bit more about photography and a lot about life. And that was the real key to me understanding that actually how to deal with life and how to deal with the business of photography and how to find work and how to keep clients. They were all the things I was being taught by my mentor, who I was assisting, a wonderful man who's no longer with us, but his name was Rick Wallace. And in fact, the book that I've just written, I've just dedicated to Rick. And he taught me an awful lot about life. And one of the things he said to me was, go off and travel and see the world, and then come back and start your career. Don't start things while you still have other things to learn. So I did that. And then I spent many years in Europe and the UK working in film and television and theatre predominantly, not as a photographer, but really just as anything, a runner, answering fan mail, PR, producing, all sorts of things, where I just gathered all these skill sets, and I realised I was really good at making things happen. I was really efficient, I was organised, and I loved people. So when I came back to Australia many years later, I went back to RMIT and spoke to one of my lecturers who invited me to come in and team teach with him. And he taught me about teaching, really. And one of my roles was to go out into the creative industry and get briefs that had been live and had been worked on and bring them back into the advertising degree, and then brief those students who would then brief photography students. And then they'd all come together as a team and we would be their client. And it was an amazing project. It was called Professional Communications, and he started it back in the mid-90s. And when he retired towards the end of the 90s, I took over that subject for many, many years, and which led me into this realization. And during that time, I really thought long and hard about my photography, and I decided that my photography was not about other people's ideas. So when you're a commercial and advertising photographer, you are putting other people's ideas, making them come to life. My photography was a lot more personal, but what I was doing in teaching photography, and also at the same time I'd become an agent for other photographers, was I was still completely immersed in photography, but I wasn't doing it. And I was just making it happen for everybody else. And I really enjoyed that. And I loved the networking side of things. And as time went on, it appeared that I was doing that for advertising students and also design students. And then I worked in design agencies and advertising agencies because I loved talking. I was really good at networking. I loved making things happen. So the photography was really a springboard for me to go into all of these other areas. And the same skill sets were needed as being a photographer in being a creative and bringing ideas to life and talking about that amongst many students, which in later years have turned into students like yourself, communication students, fashion marketing students. So it was a culmination of all of these jobs that I'd had and all of the information that I took from all of these amazing mentors and people that I worked with, that in 2013 I started the Creative Directory, because businesses, a lot of people knew about me then, and they said, well, look, if you're helping young graduates, but you're also an agent for photographers, would you be interested in helping me get work? I'm a designer, or I'm a stylist, or I'm a videographer, or I'm a bookbinder, or whatever it might be, or we have a gallery we'd love you to promote. So that's how the Creative Directory started, before social media.
I hear you mention talking about mentors who are a big part in your life and giving you advice to getting into these other networks and communication. Do you think it's important to have mentors in your life, and what importance do you think they serve?
Yeah, 100,000%. I think mentors are hugely important, because people in your life that you can run things by, you can talk about, you can show your ideas to, is hugely important, because you can't do it all on your own. It's right up there with surrounding yourself with really smart people. One of the biggest problems I see with creatives is not understanding the business of how to be a creative. And it's not necessarily making yourself an accountant, but it's understanding how to invoice properly and how to quote properly and how to keep a client and how to find a client. And having a mentor to guide you through that, who has run their own business, is second to none. And it's also really important to have somebody in your world that can pick you up when you're feeling down, or to tell you that really is a crap idea, or that really is a fabulous idea, and let's run with it. And have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? Because the busier you get, and you look at someone like me, so with all of the areas of my business, in addition to that, I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter of a 93-year-old, I have all these other things going on, but I've surrounded myself with all these people. I know that I'm one of these people that just loves being busy, and getting to know who you are. A mentor can really help you work through that as well. Mentors can also give you job opportunities too. So if they're working in an industry that you are interested in, they might hear of something and ring you and say, listen, I think you should apply for this. I've heard about this when I was at a meeting the other day. Mentors don't necessarily have to be from your industry, like what we're talking about now. So you're a special effects and animation student, but you got a lot out of my book about photography, because it's all interwoven. And so let's say you are interested in special effects. You might say, oh, well, it would make sense for me to have a special effects mentor. And yes, maybe that would be good. But in addition to that, it might be really cool to have a mentor that's a creative director or a graphic designer that can talk to you about other elements that could help you within your special effects. So you don't always have to go in the same discipline with a mentor.
Different fields can have different kinds of mentors that can be useful for all creatives. And you do mention your book and how other creatives can find many of the chapters in your book helpful. Was this an intentional move?
It wasn't so much an intentional move as the journey of the book is not just about how to take a picture. It's about the nuts and bolts of the creative industry. It's about pulling together a portfolio. It's motivational, it's inspirational. I think every creative needs to be motivated and to be inspired, and they need to understand how to do that. Whilst it says photography, we've just changed the word photography for our discipline, and I'm thrilled about that. So it wasn't intentional, but I guess when I do my public speaking, because I do a lot of talks at universities across a lot of disciplines, I talk about all of those things I talk in the book, but I make it about that particular discipline. So interestingly, I could have a book that says how to begin your career in design and how to begin your career in, we just happen to put photography. But it is wonderful to see that so many students from so many disciplines are getting a lot out of it.
I really enjoyed the book. How have other people reacted to the book?
Yeah, it's been beautiful. I've had some just some lovely feedback from students who have been feeling a little bit lost, and I think that's given them confidence to know that they don't need to be perfect to get out there in the industry. It's also given them confidence to know that they're on the right track. I think a lot of students these days and people that are graduating are a little bit confused, a bit lost as to where their career is going to take them. And what I'm basically saying is it's actually okay. What we do is we look at where we are at this point in our life and what is working and what's not working, and how we can move through that. So the feedback that I've got is even people of my age and in their 30s and 40s have come back to me empowered after they've read it. And that has been a fantastic response.
It's lovely to hear. That's been a fantastic response. What are some of the differences you've noticed with when you first started business and working in today's time?
I think it was a lot more simple back then. I don't think when I first started out, we didn't have social media. We had to be very resourceful. You know, my first foray into business was with a telephone book and looking at the kind of people that used photography, and I'd look at graphic design studios. I'd pick up the telephone and then I'd make meetings and I'd pull a folio together and I'd go out and I'd show them, and it was a lot more physicality. It was probably a lot more work, but relationships were formed, you know, and friendships were formed because you were physically with people all of the time. I became very good at picking up the telephone, and I had a computer. I bought a computer, and I'm going to tell you that was about 1996, but it sat in my desk for a year because I didn't even know how to turn it on. And then we started going in photography. We started moving from film to digital and understanding how the whole digital world was working, and then understanding how to do emails, and then understanding how to create websites. And then, so we've had all of these changes. And today, where I sit is I think that you have to be a little bit everywhere all the time. You don't want to just be online. You don't want to just be phoning people. You don't want to just be meeting people. But I think anyone that thinks that, you know, LinkedIn and Instagram are for other people, I think they're crazy. I think you got to get your head out of the sand, and you got to be a little bit everywhere all the time. It can be just purely about business, and it can be about who you are and what makes you tick. And you know, if you do decide to put a few personal things around your social media, I think that also can connect you with people in a way that it used to connect in person, be it your football team or, you know, sort of theatre or movies that you like to see. And so conversation is what it's all about. When we are thinking of employing people and working with people, absolutely they need to have the talent. But a word that you will have heard a lot over the years is it's got to be the right cultural fit. And that means for both the candidate and the employer. You need to fit into the team. And that's about personality. And And in addition, you need to be able to do the work. But a lot of the work, especially when you're starting out, will be taught and trained.
What personality traits are employers looking for most, and what are some ways we can improve these traits?
I think they're looking for interested and interesting people. You know, we're looking for people that if you go to an interview and the company says, so what do you know about us? And you say, oh, nothing really. I was just given your name and I thought it sounded like a good job, as opposed to, well, I've had a look at your website. I really loved the campaign that you worked on with this and that. And, on your website, I noticed that this happened and, and you've shown an interest instantly. That's a huge tick. You're interested. Being able to talk about yourself in a confident way is really important. I know that not everybody is as confident as I am. And I know that there are a lot of shy people around as well, but nobody knows you like you. And even if it is, look, when I'm not working, I actually really love walking my dog. We have, 4 dogs in the family and blah, blah, blah. And it shows me a little bit about you. Or, I also love printmaking whilst I'm all a digital as far as my career goes. On my personal side, because my mum is a printmaker, I'm often in the studio with her creating fabrics or whatever it might be that interests you. Most people have something, or it might be playing video games or reading stories or writing books or whatever it might be. We wanted just a little bit of an insight into what makes you tick as a person, but mostly we want you to be interested in what we do as well. I had a girl go for a job earlier this year and they said to me, look, she was a really lovely person. She knew a lot about our business, but when we asked her a little bit about her, she completely clammed up and wouldn't talk about herself at all. And we just felt that was, we're still interested in pursuing the conversation with her, but it was just a bit awkward. And I had a chat to her and she said, I just don't like talking about myself. And I said, okay, so, and that's okay too. And nobody needs to know anything very personal about you, but you do have to feel comfortable about, even if it's talking about your work, why you chose to do a particular project. So it might have been with the guide dogs because you might have, a blind member of your family and it was something that was really interested to you. So everything that you do has a reason, and you do have to have that kind of energy when you're being interviewed, because you're going to be working with these people more than you're with your family.
Right.
And you've got to get on with each other. So it's like it might be the kind of music that you're into, or, as I said, you both love playing video games, or you both love a certain type of dog, or it is an essential part of an interview. And the knowledge of the company that you're going into is really important. It just looks bad if you don't know who's interviewing you. Do your research on the person that's interviewing you. They will probably have a LinkedIn profile as well. So connect with them before you have the interview. And you might just say, hi, Sally, really looking forward to the interview next Wednesday. See you then, and you've checked them out. And you might say, actually, I know the company that you used to work for. On LinkedIn, I noticed that you work for Bloody-Da. My dad works there, or whatever it might be.
It's absolutely true. I can completely agree with the idea of collaboration and communicating with people being one of the most important traits, and like soft skills that students and people beginning need to learn more about. And after all the isolation with the last few years, do you think that collaborating with people is more important than ever?
Yeah, look, I do. I think COVID has stuffed up the whole employment sector. One of the things that has happened, though, is that when we all went into COVID, everyone went, oh my God, we're never going to see our friends and we're never going to get back into the workplace and we can't go to university. And then everyone got really used to it. And now what's happened is nobody rarely wants to work full-time in an agency or full-time in a job. They want to work 3-2. And a lot of companies are doing that now. So 3 or 2 or 3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home. And people are now wanting to work from home and wake up and, take the dog for a walk or sleep in a little bit and then just jump onto their computer and work. So the whole work ethic and the way businesses are running is very different these days. You know, if a 24-year-old said to me, I'd really like to work 2 days from home 4 years ago, I'd say, well, that's not going to happen. Whereas now that's the norm. Not every company is doing it, but many, many companies are doing it. And I think people are wanting that in a role now. They're wanting the flexibility, and they have enjoyed home. So for many, I think coming out of COVID has been a lot harder than going into COVID. A lot of creatives can be quite insular anyway. So the collaboration part is always really important. So if you are working from home 2 or 3 days, having video calls is really important, not just switching off your video or having a phone conversation or just all on email. We as creatives need to have human contact and need to bounce ideas off each other, you know, because it is a world of communication, whether you're doing special effects or photography or copywriting or marketing, it is all about communication. And so trying to do it on your own in your bedroom from home it can be really tough. So getting out and being with people is important, or the days that you are working from home, zooming in like this and touch points, really important. I do think that as a graduate, freelancing can actually be quite tough unless you really have a maturity beyond your years and a really good understanding of the business of VFX as well. I do believe that where possible, and it's not in every, there's always circumstances where where it's not relevant, but mostly I think it's important to take on a full-time role before you choose to make freelancing your career. Taking on a full-time role gives you the opportunity to learn from others, to collaborate, to look how business runs, to see what you would do, what you wouldn't do. Like, not all businesses run smoothly, and you get out of there and you go, my God, that was a nightmare. I would never run a business like that. Or you see how some employees treat employers, be it good, bad, or indifferent, how employees work with each other. And so you're building up this whole kind of bank in your head about, okay, when I freelance or when I start my own business, this is how I'm going to do it. And that was very much the case for me. I worked in design studios, and I worked in ad agencies, and I worked in universities for many years before I launched into my own business, many years, because I got to a point where I thought, God, I can be doing this myself. And that when you get to that point, you know that you've had enough. There are some people that will always work for somebody else, and that's okay. And then there are others like me that really want to work for themselves and march to the beat of their own drum. You know, I've always been very good at time management. I love doing new business. I love people. All of those things made me want to work for myself ultimately. I enjoyed working for other people, but the benefits of working for yourself are, for me, far greater, you know, that I can work really, really hard on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then take Friday and Monday off. So I think that that's something to take into consideration rather than just graduating and going out on your own. Freelancers tend to be called in at a time of need when it's really crazy, it's really busy, they're overworked, they haven't got enough staff, somebody's sick, you know, and a freelancer will come in and have to pick it all up, and you've got to often go in-house, and you're working on different computers, and you know. So in order to be like that, you really need to know who you are and what your strengths and skills are. And it can be quite daunting for a recent graduate to just be popped in and out to freelance. Okay. So that's the nature of freelance. Having your own business straight away where you have clients is slightly different, because you're working with 2 or 3 clients that you're getting to know. And that's called having your own business. But freelancing is when you're going in and out to businesses. Okay.
Right. It's very interesting that you mentioned this, because I have heard that those that are more experienced and have worked for companies as a creative and then become freelancers generally get contracts from the people they were already hired to, because they know they trust them because of this collaboration that they've already dealt with. Do you find that happens a lot with freelancing in your later years?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people that have been working for companies for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and sometimes they're retrenched. Like, you hear stories, if an ad agency loses a client, often the people that are working on that client are retrenched or made redundant. They've gone. But then they'll get those people to come back in, and freelance for them either on another client or with that, but the expenses of them having as a full-time staff member are not there. So yeah, that does happen a lot. And also, like a girl that used to work here as my intern, she's now out there looking for a full-time job and she's doing a bit of freelancing, but she'll come back. There's a few things here that my current intern, who was wonderful, might be a bit busy, or she's taken a break, or she needs some extra help. So my old intern, I'll just think, oh, Jess just knows it so well. We'll just get Jess to come. And Jess is actually who designed the book.
Oh,
And when she left,
really?
yeah, that was a intern, a design intern that did this whole book. She did an amazing job,
Amazing. Yeah.
and and so then it was her job, even after she left here, to get it up onto the website and to create the app and all sorts of stuff. So I still like to work with people. And Anthony, who was my intern maybe 6 years ago, he still does work with me as well, because we all get on really well. They just get the business, and sometimes it's just easier to get them back in.
Okay. Okay. It's good to clear that up, especially also clearing up the idea that, there is a big difference between freelancing and owning your own business, where with your business, you're still working with other people compared to freelancing, which is more so on your own
Yeah.
and
Yes, in
experienced.
freelancing, you're going into companies, like you're either going in-house to them or you're from home zooming in. But your business, you're sitting in your office or your space, and you're pulling in clients to work with you. You might choose to go in some days to work with them, but you're not there going that business one day and that business that day and that business for 3 weeks, and then you're
Yes.
managing
Yeah.
your business. Whereas freelancing, you're going in and out to companies.
Okay, that's awesome to hear. Now, since we're talking about differences, what do you think are the differences between a portfolio and having your own personalized website? Are there things that differentiate these two?
Yeah. Yeah, there are. I think that they are both an essential ingredient that you need to have. A website is the sum of who you are. It is what you do. It's a story about you. It is I do this. It's quite a literal approach to what it is that you do, with some examples of your craft. A portfolio is a body of work that takes you on a bit more of a personal journey. So it might not necessarily be in a specific order. It might take you on a journey, and it might be a lot more personal work, so that people can get an idea of what makes you tick again. There is no right and wrong with what you do with a website and a folio. But for me personally, if I'm thinking, oh, Liam, I want to have a quick look at his work, I'm going to check his website out, right? That's what he does. I'm going to meet him, or I'm going to Zoom him. We're chatting. I go, have you got a folio that you can show me, or can you show me something else? So it's not just showing me the same website that I've already seen. It's another opportunity to show something different that I sort of, oh, that's really cool. You haven't got on there. Oh, that was something that I did before I actually started my, course, whatever it might be. So it's a bit more emotional to show them. And it's just really good to have something different to show people than your website. You might have a little bit the same, and they go, oh yes, I remember that on your website. That's cool. But just a little, it's more lateral. I guess that's probably the most simple way to explain it.
Right. So the portfolio is a place to imbue a bit of who I am and what I create rather than the website.
Yes, I think that's a really good way of saying it. The website
Okay.
it's definitely who you are, but it's a bit more structured.
Okay.
So I am looking for something quite specific. I'm looking for, destruction animation. I'm looking for animation for a network where they've got starbursts, exploding onto the screen, and you might have that all listed exactly what you have done. Whereas the folio doesn't necessarily need to be as structured as the website.
Okay.
Most of the time you're showing the folio, you're with it, and you can talk people through it, or they just get it's almost like, to quote the castle, it's almost like a vibe of what it is that you can do, like a show reel, really, in your instance.
Yes, yes. Um, Now, since we're talking about portfolios, how large should the portfolio be? Is there a general kind of consensus on how large a portfolio should be?
Look, Yes and no. In a photography portfolio, I sort of talk about, and a design portfolio, I would probably talk about 20 double page spreads. You don't want it to be too short, but you don't want it to be like War and Peace. You don't want it to be so long that people are like going, oh my gosh, it depends on how you're going to show it. With someone like you, yours is probably going to be more like a show reel because it's going to be moving imagery. There's sort of a happy medium in between. You probably wouldn't want anything much longer than a minute because you've got to keep
People
your
interested, and you got to capture their attention within that first minute, I guess.
absolutely. It would be good when you put one together. Absolutely show me, but watch the reaction of people. If they still glued to it, you've left them wanting more. That's what you want.
Absolutely. In this case of, if you go beyond a certain time limit or something, is it better to have, more than one portfolio, but keep them short?
I think the only reason you do more than one portfolio if they were completely different.
Right.
So if you had a special effects folio that was purely about fire and smoke and water, and then you had another special effects folio that was really about animation and for TV networks, and the two don't kind of gel, that might be when, because you're talking to two different audiences, that might be when you would think of having a different portfolio. For instance, architects really only want to see architecture, but architectural photographers often do still life and other things as well. So they might have an architectural photography folio specifically for architects, and then they might have a second portfolio that shows their art-based work or their still life work. That they can mention to the architects if they want to, but they would be approaching two completely different people.
Okay. So it's about, I guess, tailoring portfolios to the
No,
employers.
no, I don't think it is. Tailoring portfolios can be a little bit tricky because you never know what the other person is seeing or who they might be talking to in relation to getting on board a new client. So if you
Right.
start tailoring a folio and I'm only going to show this to this person. So let's say we go to a client that does a little bit of food, and a little bit of architecture and a little bit of still life. And they're an agency that have a variety of things. You could show a variety of work to those people. If you just solely went in there and thought, oh, I've had a look at them, they don't do any fashion at all, they're not really involved in anything like that, I'm not going to show any of that work. They might be actually talking to a client that does fashion and you don't know about that. Does that make sense? So what you've
Absolutely.
got to put into your portfolio is what you want to be doing, and you show everybody that, and they will either gravitate towards it or they won't. The other thing too, Liam, is the person you're showing your folio to or your website may be at that company today, but they've just resigned and they're going to another company next week that does something completely different, that saw something in your folio that's going to be right for the new company and not the current company. Because
Okay.
people move jobs all the time and they take you with them. The most important thing at the end of this conversation for me to say is that you put into your portfolio what it is that you want to be doing, and you show everybody that. It's only certain areas of industry that are quite specific, and one of them would be architects, right?
Right.
One of them may well be TV directors or producers that want something specific in their animation. One of them might be a company that only deals in food packaging. So they're probably not going to want to see landscapes or fashion. They only want to see food. So, but if they have a variety, and if you're going to see a variety of people, you will start doing your head in if you try to tailor it to everyone. Remember, you can never ever second guess what people want to see. And you must always put into your folio what you want to be doing and feel really confident and comfortable about that. And people will either gravitate towards it or they won't.
This is great to hear, because I think it is a common misconception that people should tailor their portfolios and their work to specific people, but it's only in rare cases that this actually happens. Now, with the portfolio, should I, or does it help sharing my process on portfolio pieces?
Yeah, I think it does. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good point, especially in your instance, and same in with design. I think have a couple of projects in there where you put all of your thinkings and and how you got to your conclusion. I think that's a fantastic way to do. You wouldn't put that on your website.
And should each portfolio piece be as polished as possible?
I don't think they need to be polished. I think it's important that some of them are, but I think if you're just taking us on a journey, so often it's what the journey is, and you might not get to the conclusion that the viewer had wanted, but they've loved watching the journey, and you should have maybe stopped there, and they can actually see as a graduate where you kind of went off tangent or why it didn't quite work out. So that process, it's a bit like your personality. They're interested in to see how your brain works and where you started and where you came from, and they then sort of relate that back to the clients that they have, and they'll go, wow, I love the way he went through this whole process and he researched that and he brought that character in, and what he's doing here, wouldn't our client love that, or whatever.
Is there certain techniques or ways I can keep an audience or my clients interested in my work?
Yeah, I think social media can do that for you as well. So whilst you are busy posting information on yourself, about yourself on a variety of platforms, it's really important to engage with people whose work you really enjoy, or companies that you really like, and engage with them and like and comment, and they slowly get to know you. And they'll go, oh, here's this guy again. Well, who is he? What's he up to? And that could even lead to a job. So engagement on social media is really important. And even tagging people. So if there's an organisation that you love that does a specific thing and you've created something of that genre, tag them in it, let them know, and then keep following them and comment. And again, it's about being not just interesting, it's about being interested. And conversation's hugely important.
Absolutely. You're building a personal connection with people. And I guess the more personalized you are, the more down to earth and real people can connect with you.
One of the other things too, Liam, is I think most young people, or most people in general, tend to wait until a job is advertised. I think it's really important, if there's a company or an organisation that you really like and you've been following on social media, get in touch with them and just say, listen, I'm a recent graduate. I don't know if you've got any jobs going, but I really just love to come in and show you what I do. Is there anyone in there that I could send some work to? And they'll probably say, look, we're not employing anyone at the moment, but you could send it to our creative director, see what they think, and then you strike up a conversation, because today they might not be looking for someone, but this time next month they might be. And it's only you that they're looking at then. It's not like a job's advertised and then there's lots and lots of competition.
Right.
And then if a job is advertised in a month and they go, what about that guy Liam that just contacted us? Let's get him in and meet him. Again, it's that hunger and that's interest in a position.
It's good to have, I guess, that first approach to the hunger or the initiative to start things yourself. What do you think beginners struggle with most with portfolios, websites?
The thing they struggle with the most is time management and getting everything sorted and allowing enough time to do things, and overthinking things. Like, what is right for you at this point in your life may not be right for you at Christmas time or next year. You might be living at home with your family at the moment and life's pretty cruisy, but this time next year, you have moved into a share house, you're not all getting on very well, you're not eating properly, you're sick all the time, whatever. So you look at where you are at this point in your life. I think time management is something that's hugely important for anybody, because you've got to remember, you go through high school, primary school, high school, there's a bell to tell you when to go to the toilet, a bell to tell you when to go to lunch. Then you go to university. You've got this wonderful safety network of all of your teachers and your cohort. You have semesters that you can have big breaks and go on holidays and have a rest or take a job. And then when the college finishes, it's like, there's actually nobody telling me what to do. There's no dates, there's no times, there's no bells, there's no, I'm starting a project, there's nothing. So time management's really important. And while you are still studying, start making your network and your connections right now. In fact, start doing it from day one, because by the time you graduate, I will say to a lot of kids that contact me throughout their uni course, give me a call in September, October, and remind me you're finishing in November, and we'll have a chat. And, last year I had one guy who just wanted to go on a great big holiday because it was COVID had sort of ended. and he interviewed in November, but they allowed him to start in January when he came back. And others went straight into working, and then had a holiday. They're having their holidays now. But if you can start making those connections whilst you're at uni, and you've got people to talk to as you graduate and mentor you or offer you roles, it just makes it a lot easier. A lot of kids graduate and kind of go, oh, that's done. Now I've got to find a job. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to talk to. I haven't got a folio, or my website's terrible and I don't have a CV, and, you panic. So get it all done. As being busy is good, right? We want to be busy, but manage your time properly.
It's great advice to hear because it's such a relatable experience. As a student, I completely understand what you mean by leaving high school or university, and you're left wondering what to do.
Now, everyone has to wake up in the morning with a plan, even if that plan is to do nothing today except just take the dog for a walk, have a relaxing day, get my thoughts together, eat some really nice food, visit my grandmother, and then tomorrow I'm going to start, right? Even if that's the plan, you got to have a plan. And being in the creative industry, plans can be unraveled, which is okay, but at least you've got a plan. And sometimes you go out with the plan to do A, B, and C, and you get to B, and then F, G, and H come up, and you kind of go, whoa, I didn't see that happening, but I'm gonna go with that. And being open to things is really, my entire career, I've always, and I still do, leave myself open to opportunities. I have a plan and I stick to the plan, and then on occasion I'll go, well, hang on a minute, this has come in. If I stop this for a while and go and do that, COVID, I think, was a really good example of that for my business, because I've been running it really efficiently a certain way for a period of time, and then COVID hit, and it was just like, holy smoke, what's going to happen now? And I just regrouped. I got people around me that advised me, mentors, and sat down and went, right, well, I'm going to do online. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to turn everything online. I'm going to upgrade the website, and I did all of that in those first few months of COVID. I just worked around the clock 7 days a week because I didn't have a whole lot else to do. And with the intern that I had working with me, he was amazing. And by that first, like after 3 or so months of that first bout of COVID, I'd contacted all the universities. I felt really confident about Zooming in. I mean, I didn't even know what Zoom was,
Right. Yeah.
and I had designed PDF lectures, and I did all of those sorts of things because universities were still working. Companies weren't employing people. So I had to think, gosh, what else? But also it was about doing portfolios. So we had the click and collect going on at Officeworks, and people that upload all of their work to Officeworks, and then I drive down, click and collect it, get them on Zoom, put all of their work on the floor and start designing portfolios. And so it's about change. There's a whole chapter on my book. Change is inevitable. Change does not necessarily have to be bad. If you are going into the creative industry, you must accept and expect change. The changes that I've seen from working in a darkroom as a young photographer and being a part of the very first digital camera that came into the country to now taking photos on a telephone has been extraordinary. And learning about the kind of courses that you do and understanding communication and learning about design and advertising, it's inevitable that things are going to change. And then social media, and you go, right, I've just nailed Facebook. No, it's changed. What do you mean they own Instagram? Oh no, what's a reel? It's happening all the time. So change is a good thing. And just when you've nailed something, you think, right, this is how we're doing it, it changes again. And it's like, you can put your head in the sand or you can roll with it. If you want to roll with it, and as you're younger, I think it's easier. But as someone that's been around a long time, I have just kind of whoa, okay, now what? What do I have to learn? But I turn it into something exciting, and I surround myself with a whole lot of young people that can show me how to do it.
That's amazing. And now I really want to make this connection, but the second chapter of your book is devoted to change. You mention in it that the most successful photographers are those able to adapt to change? Adapting, as we've mentioned, is, I guess, a big essential part in life. But was there ever a time in your life where you said no to change and benefited from it?
I don't think I've actually ever said no to change, but I've questioned it.
Right.
And I've questioned how the creative directory has worked a lot. I've questioned whether I still want to have a creative directory. Um, and I've changed it slightly to how it used to be. The platform changed substantially, and as did the monetary value of it. So I changed it slightly, but I sort of went, no, I'm actually not going to change it too much because there is still a need for it. People still want to be a part of it and people are still using it. And it has become sort of a bit of an institution, I guess, in the country. So that would be one. When I was teaching on a regular basis, and I was a sessional teacher, I was never full-time, sessional lecturing, there was a lot of change going on within the university and they wanted people to get master's degrees and a whole sorts of other things in order to stay in and become more involved with university. And I actually said no to that because my role was very much, I saw as being an industry person that would come in and work with people, with students those days, and then work in industry those days and bring that knowledge in. So I actually said no to that. I didn't think that I was up to going back and studying again. I'd sort of done my studies and my learning ground was life now. So I had said no to that. And then a number of years later, I then reconnected with a variety of colleges and universities and educational facilities where I now do guest lecturing, which is, I really, really enjoy that. I am called in for my knowledge of industry, and that's really what it's about. I think for me to have gone full time into teaching, I would have lost my sense of self, and I would also have lost what was happening in industry. And really that was my key thing, because when I studied, we didn't have a lot of industry contact. I met two people during my course that I'm still very close to that blew my head off when they came in. And I always remember thinking, why don't we have more people from the industry come in and talk to us, you know? So I think those things perhaps I had said no to.
Okay. And I hear you've gone from teaching and you do a lot of guest lectures, and I guess there's a lot of life lessons you've learned through doing these
Mm.
things. But what do you think is the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
The lesson of the time management lesson, that what I do, that I love to bounce out. I want to bounce out of bed every day and love what I do. So if I am not loving what I do, I make changes to that. I have this mentor who I do a lot of work with, and she said to me one day, "What livens you and what deadens you?" So I often look at that and I think, well, gosh, do I have to do that? Okay, so I've got to change this because I don't want to be doing that anymore, and whatever that might be. So my life lesson has been to listen to my gut and to also allow enough time for my family as I do for my work, because I think you can get very wound up in your work. And, you know, my gorgeous husband said to me one night, if you don't get that email to somebody tonight, is anyone going to die? No, probably not. And he said, well, come home and have dinner and you can get it to them first thing tomorrow morning. And having to remind myself of that, I think, has been a big lesson. You know, what we do is really important, but it's not life-saving. And again, I manage my time that well that I don't mind that I have to come in some days at 7 or 8 in the morning. I don't do it often, but I do that because it just means that the rest of my day is going to run really smoothly.
And I completely understand what it is to, I guess, enjoy the work you do, because I originally went into a separate university to study engineering. And unfortunately, I figured out very quickly that it wasn't for me. And, you know, reconnecting with and understanding the importance of enjoying the work you do really helps motivate you and compels you to do it as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Liam. I think we are in this world of communication, and as I keep saying, and it's not like medicine or accounting or law, where there's structured platforms and trajectories for you to go on in that career. You know, being a creative can take on all sorts of elements, you know, and you might start in one area and move into another area and into another area and go back to that area. You might actually go right out of the area that you train for to try something else and use those skill sets in a different area. And that's a really great thing about what we do. We can change fairly quickly. And because a lot of the skill sets that you learn at uni are transferable. But look, I think life is too short to be working in a career that you don't enjoy, or to work with people that you don't get on well with. So I say to everybody that's going for an interview, really make sure that you're enjoying the interview, that you like the people that are interviewing you. If you get an opportunity, there was one guy throughout COVID, when we were just coming out, had all of these interviews for, not through me, but he was ringing me and I'd been talking to him because I'd got him his first job, and he'd had all these interviews, and he said, I think I'm going to take the job if they offer it to me. And I said, don't take it until you can go in and see the office space, you know, because it's been really tough. You'll be ultimately working in there and you need to be able to get in and see what it's like. Does it have natural light? You know, does everyone look happy? Are they all around your age? You know, are they older? What does it like? And I remember him getting in there and taking that advice and ringing me back, and he goes, I am so glad you said that, because I was sort of in two minds. But he said the minute I walked in, there was music playing and everyone was dressed really, like, you know, well, but casual. Everyone looked really happy. There was a big kind of area where there was couches and bean bags, and he said it was exactly the vibe that I wanted. And I went, fantastic. And he said it just made me want to work there. And that was one of the things that we couldn't tell in COVID. So a lot of jobs that were taken in COVID, people are now on the move because they took jobs just because they were a bit scared or a bit desperate or a bit uncertain. But now they're going back into the spaces. They're kind of going, whoa, this is not what we thought it was going to be. Or the opposite, wow, this is even better because now we're here and we can meet people and we're having a great time. So all of those things are really important.
It's very important, you know, how we approach networking as well. And I'd like to talk about networking next a little bit. Why do you think it is important to build a network?
Because a network gives you security. A network is where you find jobs. A network is where you find new ideas. A network in life makes your quest for whatever it is that you're wanting to do easier. So I can think now, you know, if a client's just rung me and needs a finished artist, it's like, right, well, my network, I'll go to that finished artist. So she was unable to help me, but she has a great friend who's about to become available. So now I've just been introduced through my network to somebody that I don't know that will probably be able to do the job for my client. And that's a really good example. Networks are hugely important on many, many levels. They're also important about generating new ideas, or collaborating. Like, so you have an idea and you think, look, I don't have any money to do this, but I need X, Y, and Z. I'll go to my network and see if somebody wants to pull this together, and then we do it as a project, and then we can all go out, and there's 4 people looking for jobs, but they'll go, well, Liam did this portion of it and Sally did that portion of it. So you're all helping each other. And networks make you or help you understand where you sit within the industry as well.
Right. What do you think is an essential part to starting a network?
An essential part is to find people that you resonate with, or the work of people that you resonate with, or the companies of people that you resonate with. And it might just start out with your lecturers. You might get on really, really well with 1 or 2 of your lecturers who might introduce you to someone like me. Rather than doing cold calls, I think warm calls are often the best. And it could be talking to, you know, friends or family members or neighbours, or a community, a sporting community, where you might know somebody that works in a special effects or works in an ad agency or works at a TV network that you can go to and say, hey, we both play hockey for the same club. I hope you don't mind, but I've just done this diploma. Have you got anybody, or this degree? Have you got anybody that I could talk to? And And he'll go, absolutely, and or she will. And so then it becomes a warm call and say, Sally says that I should, da, 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 you know, and it rolls on. So I think to start a network, look at your own body of lecturers, neighbours, family, friends.
Once you have called someone and you've started to make a connection, are there ways you can ensure they're a part of your network? When can you guarantee that there is some sort of use?
I think there's always got to be a call to action when you're phoning somebody. So what is the call to action? So the call to action would be, I'd really love to come in and show you my work and meet you. I know you're down in South Melbourne. I'm going to be down there next week. My dad works down there. Is there any chance on Tuesday I could pop in and see you? So always remember and call to action is such an advertising word, but what is your call to action when you're contacting someone? Is it just to go and see them? Is it to get a job for them? Is it for them to give you feedback on your work? Are you looking for a mentor? Are you wanting them to introduce you to their boss? So always have a reason for a phone call. Otherwise, it just becomes quite awkward.
Great. And you mentioned your book. Now, you also cover the nuts and bolts of running a business within your book. Do emerging photographers or creatives need to know about this stuff?
Absolutely. 100,000%. And I think that's why when we talked earlier on about working for other people first, and learn by watching and listening. And sometimes it's not positive. Sometimes it can be really negative and you think, gosh, I'd never do that, or I'd never charge like that, or I'd never speak to somebody like that, or I'd never finish off a project like that. Or and often it is, gee, that's great. If ever I'm in a business, that's how I'm going to do it. Or this is a really clear way of understanding copyright. Or so you're learning these sorts of things by watching and listening and learning. And there are many, many talented creatives out there that don't understand the nuts and bolts that are not working, right? And then there are some really average creatives out there that are very good at understanding the nuts and bolts that are working a lot. So if you can be between the two, there's no reason why you won't have a successful business and career. You absolutely have to understand how to run a business and how to keep up with current trends is also part of running a business. And I think people think that that's just part of being a creative. Well, it is, but it's also about being part of a business and letting people know, saying, okay, as a special effects guy, did you now know that we can blah, 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 and letting your company, the company you're working for or the clients that you have, that you are that guy that, in a lot of the job briefs that I'm getting, it's like must be across current trends in the industry. And that's a big thing. So if that's something that you find really interesting or fascinating, or you're a member of some clubs or you listen to podcasts, or you're a part of a community that's always about what's new going on, well, that's a huge advantage to any employer because it saves them doing it, right? And you're the guy coming in going, oh, we'll get Liam because he's really into all that stuff. He'll know what's cool and he'll know what's coming up and what's new and what software we need and how we could be looking at this because we've done it this way for so long. How else can we do it? And that's what they want. They want new energy all the time.
I've enjoyed this immensely. I want to thank you so much, Sally, for joining and this opportunity to talk with you. It's immensely inspiring, not only for me, but I think for others that will listen to what we've gone through today. I want to thank you for joining me today.
Brilliant, Liam. I think you are an absolute delight. I think your questions have been extraordinary and made me really think. And I think there is a lot in here for people to be listening to.
Goodbye,
All right.
Sally.
See you, darling. Bye.